And I said, "Well, that's not possible because that is my most important copyright. I got my own publishing company, and I said, I can't do that." He said, "Well, at least you got to give us half." And I said, "I can't do that."
Elvis Presley once sang, "I will always love you" to Priscilla on the very day of their divorce. But here's the catch. That song didn't belong to him. It belonged to Dolly Parton. And that single moment sums up the truth about Dolly. For every rhinestone sparkle, for every Southern charm one-liner, for every humble smile on stage, there has always been another side. A side filled with tension, betrayals, and some of the most fascinating feuds in country music history. So the question is, who dared to cross Dolly Parton? Who risked stepping into the fire behind that dazzling smile? Today we're counting down 5 unforgettable rivalries and dramatic clashes that shaped not just Dolly's career, but the entire landscape of country music. But before we dive into the drama, let's rewind. To really understand why these feuds mattered so much, you need to know where Dolly came from and why she's never been someone you want to underestimate.
Well, I want to be a star. I would like to be a superstar. I just wanted pretty things. But actually, all these years, the people, has thought the joke was on me, but it's actually been on the public. I know exactly what I'm doing.
Imagine a one-room log cabin in rural Tennessee. January 19th, 1946. Snow on the mountains, smoke curling from a chimney, and inside a family that had almost nothing except love and music. That's where Dolly Rebecca Parton was born, the fourth of 12 children. Her father, Lee, couldn't read or write, but he had sharp business instincts. Her mother, Avie Lee, filled their lives with old mountain ballads and stories that stuck in Dolly's imagination forever. By the age of 10, Dolly was already singing on local radio and TV. By 13, she was standing on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry, kissed on the cheek by none other than Johnny Cash. That night, she wasn't just another kid chasing a dream. She was destiny in motion. After finishing high school in 1964, she packed up, left home, and headed straight for Nashville. At first, she made a living writing songs for others' clever, catchy little tunes. But soon her own voice couldn't be ignored. Her breakout single, Dumb Blonde, sent a clear message. Dolly was no fool, and she wasn't going to be anyone's puppet. She was smart, talented, and ready to take control. And then came the call that would change her life forever. It's 1967. Porter Wagoner is already a big-name, flashy rhinestone suits, a $1 million smile, and one of the most popular country shows on television. Millions tuned in every week to watch The Porter Wagoner Show. When Porter invited Dolly to join his show as a replacement for his singing partner Norma Jean, fans weren't thrilled at first. Norma Jean was beloved, and this new blonde from Tennessee, she had to prove herself, and prove herself she did. Week after week, Dolly's charisma lit up the screen. Her voice wrapped around Porter's in perfect harmony. Their duets melted hearts. Their chemistry felt electric. Soon, audiences couldn't imagine the show without her. But behind the curtain, it was far less harmonious. Porter came from the old school. He liked control. He saw himself as Dolly's mentor, maybe even her keeper. And for a while, Dolly played along. She was grateful. She knew he'd given her a stage. But as her own star rose, she began to feel trapped. By 1973, it was unbearable. She wanted to write her own songs, steer her own career, be seen as more than just Porter's girl. And in 1974, she made the hardest decision of her life. She sat Porter down in his office, and instead of a speech, she sang him a song she had written just for him. "I Will Always Love You." It was her way of saying thank you and goodbye. Porter wept. But his tears didn't stop him from feeling betrayed. Within 5 years, he slapped Dolly with a $3 million lawsuit, claiming breach of contract and demanding a share of her income for life. The case rocked Nashville. Fans were stunned. The perfect duo had dissolved into bitterness. Dolly later admitted the lawsuit got her first $1 million because it took her years to pay him off. But time is a healer. In the 1980s, the two reconciled. In 2002, they even recorded together again. And when Porter was dying of lung cancer in 2007, Dolly visited him in the hospital. After he passed, she quietly held a tribute at Dollywood, not for publicity, but out of love. Their bond was always like oil and water, Dolly said. They clashed constantly, but they also cared deeply. And through that fire, Dolly learned how to fight for herself and still keep her grace. Dolly had just written, "I Will Always Love You," when she got a call that nearly floored her. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, wanted to record it. For Dolly, this was beyond a dream. Elvis was her childhood idol. The thought of him singing her words, her melody, it felt like the universe handing her a crown. But then came Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's infamous manager. Known for squeezing every last dollar out of a deal, his demand was simple. Elvis would record the song, but only if he got 50% of the publishing rights. For most artists, that was the cost of doing business with Elvis. Exposure, fame, prestige, worth more than money, they'd say. But not to Dolly. She knew publishing was everything. It was her future, her legacy, her independence. So she did the unthinkable. She said no. That night, Dolly cried herself to sleep. She was heartbroken. She had turned down Elvis Presley. And yet, decades later, that decision made her a legend. In 1992, Whitney Houston recorded "I Will Always Love You" for The Bodyguard. It became one of the best-selling songs in history. Because Dolly owned 100% of the rights, she made tens of millions of dollars. Money that would have gone to Parker and Presley. And here's the kicker. Elvis still loved the song. Priscilla Presley later revealed that Elvis sang it to her on the day of their divorce. It remains one of music's greatest what-ifs. What would Elvis's version have sounded like? We'll never know. But thanks to Dolly's courage, the song became a symbol of standing your ground and winning. In the late 1980s, Dolly joined forces with Linda Ronstadt and Emmylou Harris to form Trio. On paper, it was a dream team. 3 powerhouse women, each with unmatched voices. And at first, it worked. Their harmonies soared. Their debut album was a massive success. Fans couldn't wait for the follow-up, but behind the scenes, friction. Dolly was lightning fast in the studio. She liked to walk in, sing her part, and move on. She had too many projects, too much energy to linger. Linda was the opposite. She treated recording like surgery. Every note, every breath had to be perfect. She could spend hours redoing a single line. Dolly once joked that Linda was a pain in the ass. Linda thought Dolly was careless and flaky. 2 brilliant women, 2 completely different creative styles. When it came time for Trio 2, the tension exploded. Dolly wanted to delay the release for better promotion. Linda was done waiting. She took several tracks, stripped Dolly's vocals, and released them on her own album, Feels Like Home. For Dolly, it was betrayal. For Linda, it was practicality. Their friendship never truly recovered. And when Linda's health later silenced her voice forever, the chance for reconciliation vanished too. It's a bittersweet chapter. Proof that even legends can't always find harmony. Howard Stern has always lived on the edge. Known as the shock jock, his radio empire was built on pushing boundaries, offending celebrities, and making people laugh or cringe. Most stars either ignored him, laughed along, or fought back. But in 2008, he picked the wrong target. Dolly Parton. That year, Dolly had released the audiobook version of her memoir, My Life and Other Unfinished Business. It was classic Dolly. Warm, funny, filled with wisdom, stories of her humble beginnings and reflections on her rise to stardom. Fans adored it. But Stern? He saw an opportunity for comedy. Using audio clips from Dolly's audiobook, his team digitally manipulated her voice. They rearranged her words, spliced in new sentences, and even added obscene phrases. The result was a Frankenstein-style audio prank that made it sound like Dolly herself was spewing racist slurs, insulting other artists, including her real-life friend Linda Ronstadt, and even talking about lewd, vulgar things she would never say. It was shocking. And for fans who knew Dolly's character, it was beyond absurd. Dolly Parton, the woman who donated millions to children's literacy, the woman who built a library of free books, the woman who always preached kindness and inclusivity, suddenly made to sound like a hateful, crude bigot. It didn't just cross the line, it obliterated it. When Dolly first heard what Stern had done, she didn't laugh. She didn't brush it off with a witty one-liner. She was devastated. In a rare and emotional public statement, Dolly admitted, "I have never been so shocked, hurt, and embarrassed in all my life. I would never have said such hurtful things. I don't know how they did it, but they have manipulated my voice somehow to say these terrible things." And then came words almost no one had ever heard from Dolly before. "If there was ever going to be a lawsuit, it's going to be over this." Think about that for a moment. Dolly Parton, the woman who forgave Porter Wagoner after a $3 million lawsuit, the woman who let go of decades-old grudges with grace, was threatening legal action. That's how deep Stern's joke cut her. Howard Stern, of course, brushed it off. He called it parody. He insisted it was satire meant to be funny, not taken seriously. On air, he even joked that he was flattered Dolly knew who he was. But fans weren't laughing. Country music loyalists, Dolly's enormous base, and even casual listeners were outraged. Letters poured in. Calls flooded radio stations. People demanded Stern apologize. He never really did. And Dolly? She chose the higher road, as she often does. She didn't drag Stern through court. She didn't go on a revenge tour, attacking him in interviews. After releasing her statement, she went quiet. She refused to give him the satisfaction of turning it into a circus. But make no mistake, the wound was real. Dolly is famous for laughing off jokes about her looks, her wigs, her chest, even her accent. She's built a career on self-deprecating humor. But there's a line, and Stern crossed it. He hadn't mocked her image. He had attacked her character. For years after, the two lived in completely separate worlds. Dolly never appeared on his show, never mentioned him again. It seemed like one of those scars that never fully heals. And then, in 2023, something unbelievable happened. Dolly Parton appeared on The Howard Stern Show. Fans couldn't believe it. Why would she return to the man who had humiliated her so publicly? The answer was simple: strategy. Dolly had just released her boldest project yet, Rockstar, a 30-track rock album featuring duets with legends like Paul McCartney, Stevie Nicks, and Elton John. It was her most daring reinvention in decades, and she needed to reach audiences outside of country music. Stern's massive platform offered exactly that. When Dolly walked into Stern's studio that day, the tension was thick. But she didn't come in as a victim. She came in as a queen. Stern, perhaps older and wiser, treated her with respect. He called her a legend. He praised her energy and voice. He kept the sarcasm to a minimum. The interview was civil, even warm at times, but underneath it all, viewers could feel the history. The shadow of that 2008 prank hung in the room. Dolly never addressed it directly, but her very presence was the answer. She wasn't there because she forgot. She was there because she had moved on her own terms. It was classic Dolly. She didn't settle the score with rage. She settled it with power, grace, and the ultimate show of strength, choosing when, where, and how she wanted to face him again. Howard Stern may have thought he embarrassed Dolly Parton in 2008, but in the end, she turned the tables. By 2023, she walked into his world and left untouched, unshaken, and, as always, adored. Some feuds explode in lawsuits. Some play out in bitter betrayals. And some are quiet cuts. Words said in passing that linger far longer than anyone expected. That was the case when Jeff Tweedy, frontman of the critically acclaimed alternative band, Wilco, made headlines with comments about Dolly Parton's songwriting. Tweedy is respected in his own right. He's built a career on thoughtful, often melancholy music. Fans and critics hail him as a master lyricist, a writer whose songs carry weight and meaning. He isn't known for chasing tabloid drama. He isn't the type to throw stones, which is why his remarks about Dolly caught so many people off guard. In an interview, Tweedy admitted he respected Dolly's place in music history. How could he not? She's a global icon, a woman whose influence stretches far beyond country. But then came the sting. He said he didn't think her songs were particularly deep. He suggested her work leaned more on catchy tunes than profound meaning. And, perhaps most shocking of all, he hinted that Dolly could have stopped after writing Jolene because, in his view, that was as good as it got.
I love Dolly Parton. All I know is that she wrote Jolene, and I will always love you in the same day, and I think she should have stopped after Jolene.
For Dolly, who has always poured her life into her music, those words must have landed like a gut punch. Think about it. Coat of many colors. The story of a little girl finding pride in a ragged patchwork coat made by her mother is not just a song. It's a slice of childhood, a portrait of poverty, a lesson in love and resilience. I Will Always Love You isn't just a breakup song. It's gratitude and farewell wrapped in tenderness. 9 to 5 gave voice to millions of working women. Jolene itself is a masterpiece of vulnerability and fear. Shallow? Hardly. But Tweedy's words weren't just about lyrics. They hit at the very heart of Dolly's artistry. For decades, she has fought to be seen not just as a pretty blonde with a big laugh, but as a serious songwriter. She's penned over 3,000 songs, many of them rooted in her Appalachian upbringing, her faith, her family, her heartaches. To suggest that depth wasn't there, it wasn't just criticism, it was dismissal. Fans were quick to rally behind Dolly. Many pointed out that Tweedy himself had never written a song that could touch the global impact of I Will Always Love You. Others accused him of snobbery, of confusing simplicity with shallowness, because that's the secret of Dolly's genius. Her songs may sound simple. The melodies are easy to sing. The lyrics are clear, but simplicity isn't the opposite of depth. It's what makes the depth universal. Jolene is just 3 chords and a plea. Yet 50 years later, people across cultures and languages still sing it, still feel it. That's the mark of timeless songwriting. Dolly, of course, didn't fire back. She rarely does. She has a philosophy. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And when critics take shots at her, she lets her career and her fans do the talking. But make no mistake, the sting was there. Dolly has always been fiercely protective of her songwriting legacy. Long before she was a movie star, long before she was a theme park owner or a philanthropist, she was a girl with a notebook, scribbling lyrics on scraps of paper, turning hardship into art. Songwriting is her soul, so when someone questions it, especially someone from outside the country music world, it cuts deeper than most realize. And here's the irony. By suggesting Dolly should have stopped after Jolene, Tweedy inadvertently proved the opposite of his point. Because if Dolly had stopped there, we would have never had I Will Always Love You. We would have never had Coat of Many Colors. We would have never had 9 to 5 or Here You Come Again or any of the thousands of songs that made her not just a star, but a legend. The truth is, Dolly's music isn't meant to be dissected like poetry under a microscope. It's meant to be lived with. Sung in kitchens and churches, on long car rides. It's the soundtrack of ordinary people's lives. That's why it endures. That's why it matters. And in the end, Dolly didn't need to say a word to Jeff Tweedy. The proof was already there. Every time a crowd sings Jolene in unison, every time Whitney Houston's version of I Will Always Love You moves someone to tears, every time a child opens a free book from Dolly's imagination library, carrying her lyrics in their heart without even realizing it, Tweedy had his opinion. Dolly had her legacy. And in the court of time, there's no debate about who came out on top. From Porter's lawsuit to Elvis's missed recording, to Linda's betrayal, Stern's cruelty, and Tweedy's critique, Dolly's journey has been anything but smooth. But that's the beauty of her story. For every wound, she found grace. For every betrayal, she found strength. And for every feud, she walked away not bitter, but bigger. Dolly Parton isn't just the queen of country. She's proof that behind every glittering smile, there can be fire. A fire that refuses to be put out. So now we ask you, which of Dolly's feuds shocked you the most? Was it Porter Wagoner's lawsuit, Elvis Presley's lost recording, or Howard Stern's cruel prank? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories from the wild side of country music history. Because with Dolly Parton, one thing's certain. The battles behind the glitter are just as unforgettable as the songs themselves. And if you haven't seen the downfall of the worst junkies in country music, click on the video you see on the screen.